Okay.
Yes, we are in live now.
Yeah, we are live. Right.
Very good morning to all our CIT students, and it is a great pleasure to have you all here for Knowledge 4.0 webinar series, which is one of the unique initiative of Chennai Institute of Technology under the guidance of our Honorable Chairman Shri P. Sriram. Our CIT now offers in association with University of Texas Dallas a certification course in Python problem solving. So exclusively for our CIT students. And today we are in day 2 class of certification program on problem solving in Python, which is going to be handled by Mr. Abhigyan Sinha, instructor for the course. And it is a great pleasure to welcome him, and I hand over the session to you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So today we are going to start with some of the problems which we looked in the last session. So I believe in the last session I asked some of you, like all of you, to solve the problems as part of the homework. So I'm going to create a quick poll over here. Okay. So the first one is the quadrant question. Let me know how many of you were able to do it. Uh, that's one. Okay. Krishna, did you like try installing the PyCharm editor? Okay, those who are voting as no for the for the quadrant question, uh, can you guys tell me like what's the problem you are facing? And everyone, can you hear me properly? Just let me know in the chat if you can hear me properly. Okay, Karthikeyan, what's the doubt in quadrant selection? Is showing runtime error. Okay, what's the what's the error? Can you like tell me in more details? Like okay, the question is quadrant selection. Was the question right? The question was to determine which quadrant a given point lies in, given the point. So basically, you would be given the points. The first point would be an integer ranging between -1000 to +1000, and that would be the x coordinate, and the second point would be the y coordinate. Now, based on the uh, sign of those points, you have to decide whether they lie in first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, or fourth quadrant. Right? This was the problem, right? So, Karthik, can you post the code which you have written over the chat? Maybe I can look through it. Karthikeyan, can you? Oh, okay, I will zoom in. Is it fine now? Okay, do you guys want me to solve this? Okay, so I'm going to consider a variable, let's say x. I initialize it as, okay, before that I need to import sys. Say x is equal to 0, y is equal to 0. And I will be using a variable count to switch between the inputs which I'm taking in. You can use any other method as well, but I find this method useful for myself. And so I'm going to show you how to use this method. Now, in the last session, we saw how to read input from the file. So basically, that's a file you have been given, which contains these lines. So how to read it from there? I would say if count is equal to 0, that means I am reading the first line, and the first line contains the value for x, that is the x coordinate. So I know this count is going to act as a switch for me to make me understand which value am I reading right now. So when count is 0, that means I am going to read the first line, that is the x value, and I'm to write x equals in I. And why do I write int? Because anything you take in from the terminal, whenever anything is being input in Python, that's a string. That's of string data type by default, and I wanted to convert it into an integer. I'm going to say x equal to int of I, and I'm going to say count plus equals 1. So this is basically analogous to writing it as count equals count plus 1, and I'm increasing the value of count. So now the value of count is 1. So I have scanned in the value of x. Now I'm going to write elif, that is the else if part. Else if the count is equal to 1, that means I have already read the x value. That's why the count is 1, because look here, initially count is 0, and that's my switch. That's basically the indicator stating that when count is 0, that means you have not read anything and you're going to read for the first time. And I know that the input format is the first line is going to be the value for x. That's why I'm reading here x equals to int I. As soon as I read the first line, I'm going to increase the value of count by 1 unit. So now I know the value of count after reading the first line is going to be 1. So that's when I know that now I need to read the second line, and that's the value for y. I'm going to write y equals similarly int of I. And I'm going to increase the value of count by 1 again. Now I'm going to state over here the value of count is now 2. So if it's 0, then I'm reading in the value for x. If it's 1, then I'm reading in the value for y. If it's none of them, then I just don't need to read anything because I've read in the values for x and y, and I'm going to break from this loop. Okay. Is this part clear?
And Mr. Abhikim, I want to share
Yeah.
something. So actually, students side, so few of them are not having laptop or desktop to work out.
Okay.
Can you give some suggestions for them, like how they can
Okay. Sure. Sure.
execute the programs?
So for those who don't have a laptop to do these programs, what I can suggest is take a note of the problems which we are solving in this session. That is, note down the problem ID or the problem name. Look at the solution. Keep a notebook handy with you. Note down the solution on a notebook if possible. And when you have free time, when you are not attending the session, in your free time, you can try solving these problems on the editor through your mobile phone. Then you don't have to be in a hurry, and you can take your own time and your own pace to solve these problems, because it takes some time to write the code on mobile than writing it on a laptop. Okay, so I would suggest they can follow the session, take important notes from the session, understand how the problem is being formulated and how it is being solved, and then what they can do is in their free time they can solve it on their own, in their own pace. Okay.
They can use the online Python editor in the phone itself.
Yeah, they
So
can use that.
after the session, they can work on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Okay, is there any app to work out this problem? Like, you mean to say like an app containing the solution to this problem, Lokeshwaran? So, guys, Chakradhar and like, okay, Chakradhar, you have posted the solution twice. You can see like you are using the input thing, right? You're asking the user, you're actually prompting the user to enter X by printing a label which says enter X, then the user is going to input here. But this is not the case in this coding platform. In this coding platform, you're basically given a file and you have to read the data from that file. That's why we are using sys.stdin. Otherwise, if it had to be an interactive one where the program prompts the user to input the values, then we could have used for input. Okay. Okay, Venkat. So the concept is very simple. The concept is you will be given 2 points on two different lines. On the first line, you will be given the x coordinate. On the second line, you will be given the y coordinate. Okay. And once you read in these values, that is x and y, then you have to decide which quadrant does this point belong to, given its x and y value. So if x and y both are positive, it's going to be in the first quadrant. If x is negative, y is positive, then it means it is in second quadrant. If x and y both are negative, then it's in third quadrant. And if x is positive and y is negative, then it's in fourth quadrant. Okay. Is it clear, Venkat? And it has been already stated in this problem that you will never have an input where x is 0 and y is 0. So you won't have the case of the point of origin. Okay. Okay. So let me increase the size as well. Yeah. So we have successfully read in the input in this part. Now what we need to do is just we need to write the four conditions using if and else statement and print out the quadrant. So the printout format, that is the output format, should be the number representing the quadrant. So if I say x and y both are positive, the output should be 1. That is, they belong to first quadrant. If if x and y are both negative, then the output should be 3, stating that it belongs to third quadrant. So it should be of that format. So I'm going to write over here if x is greater than 0 and y is greater than 0, then print 1. Elif x is greater than 0 and y is less than 0, print 4. Elif x is less than 0 and y is less than 0, print 3. And the last one would be else, print 2, because that's the only case which is possible now, right? Is this clear, guys? Janishwar, how is stdin working? So it's okay. How is it working is like for I in sys.stdin means this I is going to take in a line at a time. So in this case, in the line, the only input is a number, which is the value for x coordinate. And that's why we are storing that in a variable x. And I have used, you can say, a flag or a count variable for indicating me which line am I reading, so that based on the line number, I can know that which value am I reading right now and which variable do I need to use to store it. So on the first line, I know that it's going to be x coordinate, and on the second line, I know it's going to be the y coordinate. So when I'm going to read this for I insist.stdin, that means this I is a line which is going to be read in. And that line in this problem is nothing, but it contains an integer value, that is the value of x coordinate. But in Python, everything which is read from the terminal is by default of type string. That's why we have to typecast it to integer over here. And we are saying if count is equal to 0, that means this is the first line which we are reading, then I know that that's the value for x which I need to read in. And then after reading it, I'm increasing the value of count by 1, because to indicate that now I have read the first line, so now I need to read the second line. And for reading the second line, the value of count should be 1, because after reading the first line over here, I increase the value of count by 1 unit. So now the value of count is 1, and I can say the second line, as given, as told to me by the question itself, it states that the second line of the input is going to be the value for y coordinate, and I'm storing it in the y variable here for easy readability. And I'm again increasing the value of count. Now count is neither 0 nor 1. That means I have read in two statements or two lines from the input, and I don't need to read any further. That's why this count value is now 2. So it will come over here, it will check if count is 0, this is false, so it will go over here. If count is 1, it's still false, then it will come over here. Else break, so it will just break away from this loop. That's why I have used this count to indicate me uh, which line am I reading, and accordingly which variable am I using to store it. Now after I break out from this loop, I am going to compare the values of x and y with 0, so that I understand what sign are these values, or are these coordinates of, and based on their signs I'm going to assign the quadrant number to them. So both x and y are greater than 0, that means x and y are positive. I'm going to print 1, because that's the output format. That's I am supposed to print out the quadrant number. And similarly, if x is positive, y is negative, that means the quadrant number is 4. And if x is less than 0, that is if x is negative and y is also negative, then it's quadrant number 3, else it is quadrant number 2. And what's the condition for quadrant number 2? That is x is less than 0 but y is greater than 0. Now is it clear to everyone? So Satish, the for loop is being used for reading in the values from the um, from the terminal, you can say. so that so that I can have a continuous loop, so that I can read in, and I don't have to uh, like every time write this sys.stdin command. So Preksha, is it being accepted? If that's being accepted, then it's fine. If it's not, then probably you have to do it in this way. And Sunil, I have assigned x equal to 0 and y equal to 0 because I am initializing the values of x and y. It's just a habit of mine. Okay, then it's fine, Preksha. Why should we increase count variable? So Chakradhar, because I told you, right, that that's an indicator indicating which value to use, like which line am I reading right now. So that's what the count is helping me to achieve. You can use another method. The logic should be clear. The pathway to get there could be different, but the logic should be clear. Okay. So now I'm going to submit this. So it's accepted, and you will be able to see accepted over here. These are the test cases which you won't be able to see. They are hidden, and if all of them gets ticked off, then only you get to see the status as accepted. If even one of them fails, you have to try again and think about what's the uh, test case which is failing. Okay, shall we move on to the next problem? Saran, you can use anything you like until and unless it's working for you. I again said, I think I said it to Preksha as well. She was using input. You can use input as well if that works for you. Whatever you are comfortable with. It's about understanding the approach. Okay. So Sunil, if you read the question description properly, let me show it to you. It says over here, you can assume that neither of the two coordinates will be 0. So it has been stated that there won't be a case where we receive such an input. So this is another thing I would like to focus, guys. Whenever you get a question, read it twice, thrice, or as many times you want to read it until and unless you are clear with it. Don't jump towards the solution. Read the question, try to understand what it's saying. What I do basically is I don't even look at the sample inputs, because that basically helps you understanding the question, right? You have to be strong in analyzing the question. That is, you need to understand what the question means by reading it, and then you have to think about the possible input and the possible output in your brain, in your mind, rather than looking at the sample input which is given there. That makes your problem formulation more strong, and it kinds of helps you in solving the problem. And another thing I would suggest you, whenever you're solving a problem, keep a notebook with you. Keep maybe a notebook or notepad, and take points. Like, these are the points which are the key points in the problem, and you have to focus on them. Okay. So Shakaways, you can use functions if you want to use. I said there are multiple paths to solving one problem. It depends on your comfort level. Okay. So now we are going to move to the next problem. The next problem was auto re. Okay. And for that, I'm going to set up a poll over here. So let me see the poll result. So for the quadrant question, I can see 69% have said yes, 30% have said no. And I believe after this, I think it will be 100%. I think everyone has got it. Has everyone understood it? Okay, I'm going to write down the. Okay, the poll for auto question is up. Aditya, if it's a compile error, you will be able to see the line which is causing that error. That will be shown in the editor or in the compiler window. Okay. Okay. This is the next problem. And what does this problem say? Great scientific discoveries are often named by the last names of scientists that made them. For example, the most popular asymmetric cryptography system, RSA, was discovered by Rivers, Shamir, and Edelman. So you will read about RSA algorithm when you read about uh, networking for all the computer science students. I think you will read it in your third year. It's a very interesting subject, computer networks. It was one of my favorite subjects. Another notable example is the Nuth Morris Pratt algorithm. You will know about this person. That is, we name his algorithm as the Kmp algorithm. That's the Nuth Morris Pratt. Uh, so there are three-person. Actually, it is named after. This guy is named pronounced as Kanut. This is Morris. This is Pratt, and this is a famous algorithm for string matching. And when you read about data structures and algorithms, that is the advanced one, you will surely come across this. Okay, let's read the question further. Scientific papers reference earlier works a lot, and it's not uncommon for one document to use two different naming conventions. The short variation example KMP using only the first letters of authors' last names, and the long variation example Knut Morris Pratt using complete last names separated by hyphens. We find mixing two conventions in one paper to be aesthetically unpleasing and would like you to write a program that will transform long variations into short. So it's the question is saying that um, the author of these research papers, when they publish the research papers, their names either appear on some papers as the long ones, that is the Kenneth Morris Pratt, and in some places it appear in shorter form, that is KMP. Now we don't want this kind of discrepancy or this kind of inconsistency, and that's why uh, they want us to write a program which will take in the name of the author and convert it into a short form, where the short form will consist of the first letter of the author names, and the input format will be the first and only line of input will contain at most 100 characters. So this is one of the constraints, that is the first and only line of input will contain at most 100 characters, uppercase and lowercase letters of the English alphabet, and hyphen. That is, it will at most contain 100 characters. Among those 100 characters, the characters will be either uppercase or lowercase letters of English alphabet, and it might contain hyphen. The first character will always be an uppercase letter. Hyphens will always be followed by an uppercase letter. That is, whenever you find a hyphen, the next letter after the hyphen is going to be an uppercase letter. and all other characters will be lowercase letters. What is the output format? The first and only line of output should contain the appropriate short variation. So by reading the question, I understand if this is the input I have been given, Knuth Morris Pratt, then I have to output it as KMP. And after, you can see after every hyphen, there is a capital or uppercase letter. If it's Rivest hyphen Shamir hyphen Adelman, then the output is going to be RSA. That's what the program wants us to do. Is the question clear? Guys, is the question clear? Okay. So, Satyan, what are you not getting about it? Uh, Venkat, you tried using a split function with hyphen as delimiter, but it showed a compile error. Okay. Can you tell me which point are you getting the error at? So, did you guys try this question, or do you want to try it now? 38% were saying no. Do you guys want to try it now? If you guys if you guys are uh, having the this required accessories right now, then feel free to try it. Otherwise, we can look into the solution. Okay, so Akshita, what I would suggest is you can follow the syntaxes which I am showing you here, and then what you can do is in the free time you can try looking up into Google and try and you can write a Google search how to read in from the terminal in Python. The Google will show you 5 different methods. You might find that among those 5 different methods, one of the method is which I am using. So right now, don't think about lot of methods. Stick to one particular format. That is the one which I'm showing you. Try to comprehend it. What is it like? Try to understand the flow of the program. Once you are comfortable with it, then you will yourself realize that this is the things which I need to do. These are the syntaxes I already know. Now, if there is something which is beyond uh, your knowledge, then you have to find it on the internet. Okay. Satyan, your question is not clear. How long of variable can we give, sir? I don't understand the question. So Akshita, another thing. So you're not you're getting confused with what command or what syntax to use where. So it's simple. Try thinking it in this way. Try breaking the problem in this way. Let's say first of all, the first task in any problem is to read in the input. So you should be comfortable with reading the input. So if you're not, then you have to find out how do I read read in the input. So there is one way which I have shown you guys, that is using the for loop over the sys.stdin. There is another way to read it using a prompt, that is the input, that is the easier one. You just write input, and you in the parenthesis you mention whatever you want the user to input, and you store it into a variable. There might be other ways of reading in from the console. There might be ways from reading from the file. There might be ways from reading from Excel files. So there's a lot of methods. So Python is a vast language. It has found its usage in lots of domains, and therefore there are lots of functionalities in it. But we cannot think about the whole problem at once, right? So that's why what I'm telling you guys is to read the problem, make notes of the points which you want have to solve, and step by step uh, approach the problem. That is, divide the problem and then conquer it. So Venkat, okay, you tried, but okay. So I will explain the solution. Okay. So like how I approach. What is the first task I need to do? Ask yourself, what is the first task I need to do in this problem? I need to read in data from the file slash terminal. Okay. Now, what format will the data be input? That is given to me in the question description itself, right? So I might have a input in this format. I might have an input in this format, or let's say I might have a input in this format. It's let's say just one name. Uh, let's say just one name. I might have an input in this format as well. Let's say uh, so depend. So these are the possible ways which I can have an input. So first you need to think about what are the possible uh, inputs which I can get based on the problem description and the input format specified to us through the problem description. So everywhere I can see that there's just one line to be read. Okay, and there's just one line to be read, and that in that line I might contain uh, two or more strings separated by a hyphen. I might have a string where there is no hyphen, so in that case there won't be a problem. But I will have strings where there are possibilities that there is a hyphen between those strings, and the next letter itself after the hyphen is an uppercase letter. So how do I solve it? Okay, the first task would be reading in the input. So for reading in this input, I can see I need to store this somewhere. Some of you can use a string variable. Some of you can use something. What I have used here is I will be using a list data structure. That is, I'm going to this. Okay, I need to import sys first. Say list equals to this. That is, I've declared an empty list. Now I'm going to read in. And say list equal to I dot split at hyphen. What is this doing? This I is basically the line, right? This I is in this case, let's say this is the input. Then this I is Kanuth hyphen Morris hyphen Pratt. Now when I write this, what is this going to do? This will basically say will store these values in the list. Basically, this is the line which we read in, that is this thing over here, and I made a split on the hyphen. Now after splitting, I get three individual strings: Kanuth, Morris, and Pratt. So this is basically becoming a list where I am storing these values, and this will look like this, right? Now once I've read in, I know the input is going to be just one line. So once I've read in the first line, I do not need to read anything else. I'm going to say break, just break out from that loop. Okay. Now in Python, if you have a string, let's say if you have, let's say I declare a variable, let's say a equals to Python, then if I print a0, then this is going to print me p. If I print a1, then this is going to print me y. If I print a2, then this is going to print me t. So you can understand what I'm trying to uh, tell here is that the string is the string has indices, and this index, when we specify the index in this square bracket, it basically prints out the character at that index. So this is 0, that p, y is at index 1, t is at index 2, h is at index 3, and so on. So I can use this property of string to extract the first characters of all these elements in this list. So this is clear, right? So till here, I had to read in the input. Okay. This was the part. Like, first, my problem was, what is the first task I need to do? I need to read in data from the file or terminal. That has been solved over here. Now, what is the second task which I need to perform? Second task would be extracting characters from the string, right? That is my second task which I need to perform. Now, what have I used here? I have used list data structure to store the data, right? And how does the list look like? This is how it looks like. This is how it is going to look like after I apply the split function over hyphen, right? Now every element in the list is a string, and I just showed here how to access the first character of a string. That is, you index you actually write in the 0 in the square bracket to index the first character of the string. So now what I need to do is I will iterate in this list, and I will extract the first character of every element in this list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a variable, which is a string type variable. This is an empty string variable. And why do I need to declare an empty string variable? Because when I extract k, I'm just going to add it to this res variable. So this will become now k. Then when I iterate over the second element in this list, that is Morris, I will just need extract m and add it to res. And I will do it the same thing for Pratt as well. So now how do I iterate over a list? It's simple, just using a for loop. So let's say for L in list, I'm going to say res equal to res plus L0. And why do I write this? Because when I say for L in list, what is the list? List is this thing, right? So when I first iterate over this list, the first element, that is L, is equal to Kanuth. And the 0th index of Kanuth is going to give me the character uppercase K. And I add it to this variable res. So res is basically initially declared as an empty string, and when I add it with this k, it now becomes the value of res is now k. On the second iteration, the value of L is Morris, and L0 will give me the character M, and that will be added to this variable res. On the third iteration, the value of L is going to be Pratt, and L0 is going to fetch me the character P. So that's how I'm going to get the result string. And the last part is just, what is the last part in this? So what was the first part? Reading in the input, which was done over here. Second task was extracting characters from the string, which has been done over here. And the third part is printing the output. Printing the output. Just print the variable res. That's it. Is this clear? Guys, is the solution clear? Okay, so if you guys can take a note of this, uh, maybe take a screenshot or maybe take a note, like this will help you develop the thought process as well, how to break down the problem into parts. And then uh, Venkat, that's a good thing you're thinking about exceptions, but if you read the problem statement, then they have clearly mentioned that the possible inputs would consist of uppercase and lowercase letters and only hyphens. Okay, so what I'm going to do is scroll up. So I want you guys to note this down so that it's something which you can refer to whenever you want to think about the problem, like how to take the approach of solving a problem. Okay, so Chakradhar, it's basically the terminal from where we are reading in, right? So I wrote in file because if it's going to be file, then you have to use the OS library, and there's a file parameter in there which is os.open or file.open. You can use that parameter over here, but here what's happening is there's a terminal and you cannot see the terminal. The editor is where you write the code, and when this code is compiled, then the values are being supplied to the terminal, which takes in the value through sys.stdin. That's where it's taking in the value. Okay, Venkat, if the user enters bad input, problem happens, right? So, what possible bad inputs the user could provide here? Like the problem already stated, right, that the any input would either contain a combination of lowercase and uppercase letters, and maybe with a hyphen or without a hyphen. Yeah, Karthikeyan, tell me. And let me know, guys, when you have noted this down. Okay, Venkat. Okay. Um, Krishna, what I can do is I can post here a couple of links which might help you, because I don't know if I will get the time to uh, show that. You can find it on Google how to install it. There's a complete documentation of it, step by step process. And it's pretty simple. You just install it and set it up, and Anaconda basically sets up the path for Python by itself. And then for the PyCharm, just go on for the downloading the community version. And okay, so Chakradhar, you have Spider. Okay, yeah. So Chakradhar, for running this code on Spider, find the terminal over Spider and provide the input from terminal. That's going to exactly work out the same way how it is working over here. And if you want to read a file, you have to look into the OS library. So there's this os.read method which you can use to read a file. So you can always search for it over the internet. It's a simple method. You just need to import the OS package, and then you need to use os.read. In the parenthesis, you give the file name and an integer value denoting the number of bytes you want to read from the file. And if you want to specify a return type, the function which you are reading in, you can do that as well. So if I could show you, wait, where's the cursor? Okay, yeah. Let's say you want to read in the file, right? So what you have to do is, like, you have to write in import OS. That's the operating system library, because you're dealing with file system now. And let's say you're going to store the file in in a data structure, right? So let's say file data is equal to be os.read. Right here, you need to mention the path for the file, and you need to mention os dot. This states that the file is read only. And there are other methods as well. You can provide here os dot, instead of os dot read only. Um, oh, sorry. This is going to be os dot open. As I'm opening the file or reading it. There's another function which says read bytes. You can say, let's say, for reading the bytes, let's say this is the variable name read bytes, and I'm going to say os dot read. Now this is the let's say this is the file data. Okay. The one where we had the data temporarily for reading it, and then we are going to mention the integer, that is the number of bytes we want to read in. So in order to understand more about this, you need to understand the file system. You need to have some knowledge about bytes, bits, how the memory is represented in operating system. So, and if you just want to read in a file, then you can just look up into Google of write down just import OS and how to read in file in Python. They will show you these operations. These are the common ones. Now, based on your usage, depending on what you need it to use for, you might find out different functions as well. But for the programs which we are seeing, we don't need to read in this file using the OS package. The sys.stdin is good enough. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, Chakradhar. So my mail ID is, I'm going to write it down in the editor itself so that it's visible to everyone. It's my Gmail ID. So if you send me an email, most probably I'm going to get back to you within a day.
And one more thing, Mr.
Yes.
Abhigyan, I sent you the feedback of the
Yeah.
students,
Yeah.
right? And you could see in that feedback that the students are from different streams are
Yeah.
attending the program. So, what kind of advice will be giving to the students other than the circuit branches, those who are attending?
So
And what about the fundamental knowledge that they are having, whether it is enough for them to follow all these programs? Can you just give some guidelines?
okay. So what I can suggest is there is no one way to study about a language. What many people and most of us have seen, like myself, even I have learned the languages by solving problems. Like uh, it's like, let me explain it in this way. You will never know about a function until you find a use for it, right? Those functions are not something which you read about in your daily life. You're going to find out or discover a function in a language only if you find out a need for it, if you want to perform a task which can be performed by that function. So the only solution is to keep on solving more problems. The number of problems you solve, the more you solve, you're going to interact with the language more, and you will feel that after solving, so if you solve 10 problems, or let's say if you even solve 5 problems per day from Catus or from any other coding platform, if even if 5 seems like 5 seems to be some kind of heavy task, let's stick to 2. Solve 2 problems per day. You will find that you are improving day by day, because the problem requires you to use logic, and that logic has to be interpreted in this syntactical way so that the computer or the compiler understands. So for this, what I can suggest is follow a book, a book for referring to the syntaxes. You can download an ebook if you need, uh, but solving the problem is what is going to help you. So you can even read the book, but reading it won't help you enough if you don't have hands-on practice and experience. That's where it's going to be with you, and you are going to get comfortable with it. Like there is a lot of functions with string in Python. You're not going to remember each and every one of them, but until and unless you don't use them frequently in your problems, that's when you're going to remember, and that's when it's going to come to you naturally, so that you don't have to put in extra effort to remember these functions. So what I would suggest, students who are from different stream, uh, I would suggest this Python. So what I feel is the best way to learn programming is to learn through C programming. Because in during my college days, even when I was new to programming, I learned programming through C, because I feel C is such a language which helps you understand the flow of the program in a beautiful way. And if you are comfortable the understanding the flow of the program through Python, then it's fine for you. But what I can suggest, if Python is not making any sense to you, and if you don't connect with the language, if you're finding it difficult to find the flow, There's one way. You can either look into C programming, understand the flow, then correlate it with Python, and then understand what's happening in Python. So again, having a reference book would help in those scenarios. Even a reference book for Python would help. Like somebody just asked me why we use break. So we use break when we want to break out of a loop, or we want to break out of a program structure. So why do we need to break out? That's depending on the problem. So how do I use this break? When do I use this break? So there are a lot of things in the programming language, but when do I use something? How do I use it? And how can I use it to better my program? That's completely based on the practical uh, demonstration. So what I can suggest is get a reference book, read the book, uh, like read what are classes, what is object-oriented programming, what is polymorphism, what is inheritance, when do we use super classes, when do we use base classes, when do we use child classes, when do we use abstract classes, uh, what are the different data structures present in a language, what are the different string functions present in a language. So all these, if you can get a reference book, that will be helpful for you, so that you can look up and find a solution to your queries. But then, to be able to use these knowledge in the practical uh, world, that is while solving a coding problem, you have to be uh, you have to practice daily, and that will come by practice. That the You cannot start coding by reading a book. You need to practice. You are going to face problems in the initial stages, but then once you overcome those stages, you are going to feel that you have certainly leveled up, and these problems which we are solving right now, you will be able to solve them in within a couple of minutes. I hope that answers the question.
So the students should not be demotivated. So they have to explore. So then only
Yeah.
they can.
Exactly, exactly. So what I believe is, like, start from the easy problems, keep on solving, and that's how you are going to build upon that.
Yes, each and every syntax they have to understand and
Yeah,
use it.
exactly. Okay, so I'm going to submit this and I'm going to move forward with the next question. Oh, I wrote there something like, did I wrote file was okay. Oh, okay, that's fine. So this is accepted. Now let's go to the next question. Okay. Before I move into the next question, I want to take a quick poll. So in order to understand, uh, okay, the poll is almost ready. Okay, this is the new poll, and I just want to know, like, how comfortable you guys are with loops. Okay, so I can see 32, 33%, or like, okay, it's increasing. 32% are very comfortable, and so something around 65% is intermediate. So I believe intermediate knowledge is what required for solving the next problem. I think that will work. Okay, this is the next question. Stuck in a time loop. Last night, when you went to sleep, you had a strange feeling that you may see the same day again, and your strange feeling came to be when you woke up. Everyone seemed to think that it was yesterday morning. The same strange feeling came back in the evening. When this pattern continued for days, you looked for help from a time wizard. The wizard says he can break you out of the time loop, but you must chant his spell. The wizard gives you a magic number, and you must count up to that number starting at 1, saying abracadabra each time. So I'm going to read this question again. Last night, when you went to sleep, you had a strange feeling that you may see the same day again. So last night, when you went to sleep, you felt like when you wake up, you're going to wake up in the current day, that is the same day, on the day when you went to sleep. And your strange feeling came to be when you woke up. That is, your strange feeling came to be the reality when you woke up. Everyone seemed to think that it was yesterday morning, and you found out that everyone was thinking that it's yesterday morning. That's the feeling which you had while you went to sleep. The same strange feeling came back in the evening. So again, on that night, you are having the feeling that it's again going to be yesterday morning. So when this pattern continued for days, that is, this pattern continued for days, that every time you go to sleep, you have a feeling that tomorrow is going to be yesterday. Basically, tomorrow is not occurring. So you look for help from a time wizard. The wizard says he can break you out of the time loop, but you must chant his spell. The wizard gives you a magic number, and you must count up to that number starting at 1, saying abracadabra each time. So all these details are just there to confuse you, right? So these things, the wizard says this, and you have to um, chant his spell, all this. The crux of the problem is that there is a loop, and you have to break out of that loop. That's what you have to infer from this problem. If you read these two paragraphs and if you infer these 2 points, then you are having, and then the intuition which you are building is in the right direction. That's what you need to interpret. Now, the second part is, what's the input format? The input consists of a single integer n. What's the constraint over n? That n can be greater than equal to 1 and less than equal to 100. So it can be an any integer which lies between 1 to 100 inclusive. That is, it can either be equal to 1 or equal to 100 and somewhere between that. What is the output? The output, the entire wizard spell by counting from 1 to n, giving one number, and abracadabra per line. So the wizard says he can break you out of the time loop, but you must chant his spell. The wizard gives you a magic number. What is the magic number? That is n. Wizard gives us a magic number. The value of that number is n, and n is a variable. It is going to be input from the terminal, and you must count up to that number. That is, you have to count up to that number starting from 1. So whatever the number wizard gives you, let's say wizard gives you 5, you have to count from 1, and you have to say abracadabra. So you have to say count 1 abracadabra, 2 abracadabra, and so till you reach 5. That is the value of n. So now you are going to see the sample input. So sample input is 5, and the sample output is going to be 1 space abracadabra. So note here, you might print 1 and abracadabra, but you might forget to print the space between it. This will throw you an error. That is, this will lead to the failing of test cases. So you need to keep in this mind that the output being shown here should be the exact output which you are giving out. That should be the level of consistency which you are with which you should code. Okay. So is the problem clear to everyone? Guys, is the problem clear? Okay. So what I want is you guys to try out this problem, and I'm going to set a poll. Uh, so those who have finished it, honestly, say yes, you have finished it. Otherwise, and if you are finding any trouble solving it, I will help you. Okay. So don't worry about the time, but think about the intuition. Okay. So okay, no, we have 18 minutes left. So try solving it in within those 18 minutes. If the problem is not clear, just let me know. I can explain it once again. Okay. So few students have already solved it. That's very good. So I'm going to create a poll. So I think I saw someone saying they were getting runtime error in the last problem. Uh, Akshita and Jeet. What's runtime error? You're getting runtime error. So did you copy the code properly, the one which I wrote, or like were you trying your own code? What I can help you is, Jeet, I can maybe share my code. Let me see. Uh,
Mr. Abikin, if you
yes.
want areas to be added in feedback, like you want to know from the students.
Oh yeah, yeah. That could be good. But okay. So then I think we can create a new column in that Excel that states error related to code, so that I can quickly find out through that column.
Okay, error
Uh,
related
yeah,
code.
error related to the code, so that I can quickly find out what's the problem they are facing. And it would
Okay.
be good if they could like paste their code which they have written along with the error message which they are getting.
Okay, so the problem we can give in the option button, and in that problem, what error code they encountered.
Yes, the name of the problem, the code they have used
Yes,
for solving it, and what's the
sure.
error message they are getting.
Okay. So shall I cover up day one problems also?
Day one problems,
Or
yeah, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, like if some students are facing difficulty in day one problems, I'm happy to help them.
okay.
Oh, I think I cannot see my submission here. Um, okay. What I will do is I will share it in the slide itself. So the solution for our authority will be updated in this slide, and ma'am will probably share it with you. Okay, the problem which we were solving is time loop. Can zero be included in the count? No. Satish, read the question properly. See what it has written. The wizard gives you a magic number and you must count up to that number starting at 1. It has properly been written there that it has to start at 1. So I am telling it multiple times. Read the question uh, until and unless you are clear with the question, until and unless you are clear with the roadmap. So it should be such that when you are reading the question, the roadmap should be uh, the roadmap has to be built in your mind that how you should approach the problem. That's what you should aim to achieve. Because whenever you go for this coding interviews, you won't have so much time. There will be a time when the interviewer will discuss with you the problem, and then you have to understand the problem. uh, he won't even give you some test cases. He might give you one or two, but you have to think about all the edge cases, all the exceptions, and everything in that. Let's say uh, the time limit would be 40 minutes or 45 minutes, and those questions are really tough. Like those questions they consist of multiple topics. So if you build this habit at the starting stage to read the question and to get the visualization or get to build the roadmap in your mind that how you're going to solve it, then that is going to be a big advantage for you. Then because you don't have to rely on the sample inputs, you can just think about the input in your mind, because that means you are clear with the problem statement. So in the poll, I can see 53% are still saying no. Guys, what is the problem you're facing in this question? Is it the output format? Is it the reading the input? So, Karthik, and we are not discussing Tarifa right now. We are discussing stuck in a time loop. If time permits, I'm going to discuss Tarifa. But right now, I am focusing on this problem. Guys, can you tell me what is, uh, which part are you facing difficulty in this problem? Because I see 55% of you guys are saying that you're not able to solve it. Reading input. So, Puvi, did you follow the previous questions where we were reading the input?
And Mr. Abhigya, I want to tell one thing.
Yeah.
Students can fill the feedback after completing the programs. So after
Okay.
getting the code, I will give 1 day time so we can. I will just send you the day two feedback link after their response. After execution, they can fill the feedback link.
Yeah,
I think.
sure, sure, sure. Okay.
Yeah. So we have stated the error code. So let them try and don't fill that for namesake for filling up attendance. So please do fill after completing.
Yeah, so that I am able to understand like what is the problems you are facing. Like
We'll give
it is
some
actually
time.
aimed at helping you, so make it easy so that I can help you. Okay.
Sure. So we'll give 1 day time. Tomorrow by 4 p.m. I will consolidate and send it to you.
Okay. Okay. That would be great. Okay. So Puvi, you're saying reading the input, right? So let me solve this. So again, what's the first thing I need to do? Read input. So how do I read input here? Import the sys package for I in sys.stdin. I'm going to say, so if you don't understand the usage of this, I would say memorize this line. Okay, this is going to help you at every problem in this platform, and eventually you yourself understand what's the meaning of this, because I have explained it. Even if it does not make any sense, then I would suggest that memorize it. A lot of people will tell you don't memorize this, don't memorize that, but sometimes you have to memorize so that eventually you can write the code and then you can understand it, right? You don't want to be stuck at reading an input. So the first step is reading in the input, and I will declare a variable, let's say num equals to 0. This num is the variable which will hold the value of the magic number, that is the magic number which the wizard will give us. So I'm going to say num equals, now I said this, that the input in Python is of type string, right? So what I need to do is basically I need to convert it into integer. And for safety purpose, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I dot strip. That is, it's going to strip off any space around the integer, or around the input. Then I want to break out of this loop. Why? Because I just have to read in one integer, that is one line. You saw in the input format that there is just one line which the wizard is giving us. He's giving us just a number, and that's what we need to read in. Now, the task has been achieved. That is, reading the input has been finished. Now what? Printing the output. Now, if how is the output being printed? Let's say if the value of num is 2, then the output is going to be printed as 1 space abracadabra followed by 2 space abracadabra. So here you already have the value of num being 2, and you need to print it serially. That is, num equal to 2 means you have to start with 1 and you have to continue till 2. So that's what the problem description was. Given the value of n, you start with 1 till you reach n. So I can see I need to print this number as well, right? So for that, I'm going to declare a variable. Let's say count equals 1. So count equals 1 means I'm always going to start from 1. That's why I've declared this variable where count is equal to 1. I'm going to use the while loop here. Okay, I'm going to say while num greater than 0, let's say print. So while num greater than 0, because I'm going to decrease the value of num every time I iterate. So this count, when I declare it count equal to 1, this is of type integer. So I'm going to write here str, that is the string. I'm typecasting into a string type so that I can print it in this format, because I need to append this with this abracadabra, which is a string, and I also need to have a space over here. I'm going to write count plus, so what this will do is count is now 1. So this is going to print 1 abracadabra, and let's say num is 2. So now I'm going to say num equals num minus 1. Now num is 1, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase count by 1. What happens on the second iteration? Count is now 2 and num is 1. So this is going to print 2 abracadabra. Then num becomes 0 and count becomes 3, but this condition on the third iteration, num greater than 0, is false, so it's not going to print anymore and it's going to exit the loop. Is this clear? Can this, Satish, can this plus sign be replaced by a comma? So we are basically appending the string, right? This plus sign means we are appending the string. We are basically attaching one string to another. That means this plus symbol means in string, it means appending one string to other string. That is, if I write uh, hi plus my, all these in double inverted quotes, then what the print is going to do, it's going to attach all these strings, club them up, and print it as a statement. So that's why I'm using this plus operator. So this was the first part, that was the reading the input, and second part was printing the output. And based on my needs, I decided, do I need a variable to print this 1 2? I said yes, I need it. That's why I declared a variable over here. Now how do I make it print 1 2 dynamically? That is, I inside the loop I change its value. I increment this value by 1. And how do I change the behavior of num? That is, how do I ensure that we are printing as many as times as the wizard has told us to, not less, neither more. That is neither less nor more. So we are decreasing the value of num by 1 unit, and we are ensuring that num is greater than 0. So if num was 5, then this would print 5 times, exactly 5 times. How? First time num is going to be 5, count is going to be 1. It's going to print 1, abracadabra. Then num becomes 4, count becomes 2. 4 greater than 0, true. Print count. What's the value of count? 2. 2, abracadabra. Num becomes 3, count becomes 2 plus 1, 3. Num is greater than 0, true. Print 3, abracadabra. Num becomes, uh, num was 3, right? So num becomes 3 minus 1, 2. Count becomes 3 plus 1, 4. Print 4, abracadabra. Now num becomes 2 minus 1, 1. Count becomes 4 plus 1, 5. Print 5, abracadabra. Now num becomes 1 minus 1, 0. Count becomes 5 plus 1, 6. But num greater than 0 is false, so it's not going to print anymore. It's going to exit out of this loop. That's ensured. So that you can see, even if you have doubt, like is the program going to work right or not, you can just simulate it using a pen and paper. With every iteration, what's the output you are going to get. Then that will help you understand how the loop is working, and how like what's the behavior of these variables, how is the behavior of these variables changing with every iteration. Okay, I'm going to submit this. Okay. So that strip is basically, we strip the space off. Yes, Yogesh. Again, I said, like, you can use whatever you want, uh, whatever you are comfortable with. It's just I'm here to uh, teach you guys like how to think about approaching the problem and how to develop the intuition about solving a problem. That's all. The language is just something like, which you can learn in a month, or let's say if you focus more, you can learn in 2 to 3 weeks. But the intuition is something like it's like speaking a language, right? uh, we know we learn to speak a language, but then it's that with maturity we understand its usage at proper places with in a proper way. So we use strip to strip off any spaces if we have for the input. That's why we use the strip function. The parameter of strip function, so I mentioned here a space, right? So it will basically strip off all the spaces here. So I mentioned a space over here. So whatever you're learning from these sessions, I would suggest go on, uh, read about it on the internet, and learn more. There are more closely aligned concepts with all these which I am showing you, and they will help you at some or the other stage. Okay. So Chakrada, you're facing problem only in writing the code to access the terminal to read input. Um, if you are writing the code which I have written, I think you won't be facing any problem because this is the same code which I used to read input from terminal. Okay, guys. So we are about
Yes.
to end the session. Yes, ma'am. You're going to tell something.
Uh, some of like what problems today we discussed again. And one more thing I want to clarify. So, sir, on that day, on day one, he shared the institute ranking, right? That link.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, so we could see some healthy competition among a few people.
yeah.
Like we want all the and how the score gets reflected. Can you just tell me about that? Like
Okay,
I'm just sharing that in the chat box at
okay.
college.
So what happens is when we go over a
Uh,
problem,
yes,
and let's say this is one of the problems, and if I go over here and submit, I switch to editor, I write the program, and
yes,
then I click on this submit here. Now, on clicking on submit, if it's correct, that is by correct I mean there are a lot of hidden test cases, and if
okay.
all the test cases are evaluated to be true, then only it is accepted. And as soon as it is accepted, the score over here gets updated and the rank also decreases. That means a lower rank means you are uh, getting into the higher category. That means you are doing well to go into the top
This
performers.
on the Chennai Institute that zone or it's a overall ranking irrespective of all the universities.
I think it's kind of overall, but I will get back to you with like by confirming with the Professor J, because then because I even that makes sense, because then we are setting the country and
Oh,
the
sure,
subdomain,
sure.
right? So yeah,
One
so
time user can attend one problem, right? So
can you repeat? Like your voice got distorted.
one CATUS user can attend the particular problem one time, right? So then the score will be updated.
No, they can attempt the. Oh, okay. Oh, you mean to say like if they solve the same problem over and over again, will it affect the score?
Yes.
Yeah, no, no. So if they solve it once correctly, then that's the score they are going to get. It
In any
and
language.
yeah, and then if they want to solve it again, it's there for their own practice, but they won't get any additional score for that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we got certain Catus users have got 52.3, 51.6, and some other 6.2. It is based on how many problems they are solving, right?
exactly, exactly. So based on the problems they are solving, based on the difficulty level of the problem, so problems with higher difficulty level have a lot more weightage assigned to them, and problems with lower difficulty level have lower weightage assigned to them. Also, it depends on which competition these problems were uh, given. So all these problems which we have here is a collection from different competitions. So whenever you go to a problem, let's say uh, let's say you go to this problem datum, you can see, scroll on the right, you can see this is the source, Croatian Open Competition in Informatics. This is the year when it was held, and this question was there. So this all questions are legitimate questions. They have been collected from different competitions. Okay, so yes, so yes, so ma'am, so if you have something to say,
Sure.
or we can
So we
like,
have got
yeah.
a question asked from Chakrada.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I just answered it. So what I will do is like yeah, in the previous session, I will attach my code to the slides,
Sure.
and then ma'am, you can share it with them so that they
Sure.
can get my code, and that's probably working fine. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem, ma'am.
I'll get back to you with the feedback tomorrow. So,
Okay.
and meanwhile, you if you share the slide, I will just pass it to
Okay,
the
sure,
student.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Okay,
very
no
much.
problem. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for attending the session. Have a good day, guys. Thank you.